Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Leadership Garage podcast. My name is Crispin Achola. I'm your host, and today I'm so excited to be hosting one of the leaders that we have in corporate Kenya. And as always, I've always told you that the Leadership Garage is a place we come to share leadership conversations, more specifically in relation to how we can raise our performance, how we can look after our own well-being, develop ourselves, develop our teams. And I always like to make a reflection or relatable conversations into car's performance, whether it's a car you like, whether it's a motor vehicle that you like to be in, and how can this translate to how your leadership goes. So join me in welcoming our guest today. And our guest is none other than somebody I have known for a good period of time, none other than my own spouse, husband. And I have known him for a few years. But you know what? Sometimes we say charity begins at home. So why don't you welcome with me Crispin Achola to our podcast today. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hi, Mercy. I know you've been running this program, and it's really exciting to be here today.
Okay.
I don't know, I was never here earlier.
Well, here you are today. And I just reflected and thought, you are a leader in your own right, in your own capacity. And I was like, why don't I have you onto the show today? And here we are. So why don't you begin by just briefly giving an introduction of yourself to our listeners? Who is Crispin Achola from a leader's perspective?
Well, I mean, that's quite a difficult question because everybody's a leader. We're just different types of leaders.
Mhm.
I mean, I wear several hats. I think the first one is obviously I'm a husband and a father, and those are leadership roles that you have to play. But I think more important, probably to the guys on the call today, I'm a corporate leader. So
Mhm.
I started off in Unilever, came into BAT, worked for 18 years, decided to venture out to Kimberly Clark, and came back to BAT. And in my current role, basically, I do lead a team. I lead markets. I'm responsible for 26 markets across East and Southern Africa. But I think for me, it's not really about the scope. It's about the impact you have on people. And there are people because of a seniority perspective. There are people because of an experience perspective who look up to me and call me their leaders. And I think that's the more important part of leadership.
Excellent. Thank you. I've heard you there say that leadership is about impact. And in our leadership garage conversations, impact cannot come without performance. And there's something that I was discussing the other day with someone, and they said that nobody wakes up every day. No one wakes up, regardless of what they're doing and where they are. You rightly said we are all leaders in our capacity, and nobody wakes up with an intent to fail. Similarly to what we see in motor car racing or in any other kind of competitive sport. No one ever sets out with an intention of not winning the race, not winning the game. But yet we see that happening over and over again. So from a leader's perspective and the impact that you are talking about, what could you say would be the things that end up making people not succeed because no one ever sets out to fail? What could be some of those reasons?
Well, Mercy, it's a real tricky question. And the way I see it, it's around how people define success.
Mhm.
Yeah. And in the kind of positions I find myself in, I find myself increasingly understanding that success is about progress and not necessarily achievement.
Mhm.
If you can go to bed at night knowing that you moved forward from where you woke up in the morning, for me, that is success. Yeah. And the reason for that is that achievement is about progress, not necessarily achieving goals, because sometimes the goals could be flawed. Sometimes the goals could be different. But if you can go to bed at night saying, today I woke up and found it at point A, and I have pushed the big rock to point B, and if that point B is only 1 inch farther, then you found it in the morning. For me, that is achievement and progress.
Mm-hmm. I like that response, and I bring it back home to a car's performance. We all go, most of us do own motor vehicles, whether it is a motorcycle, whether it's a bicycle, whether it's a car. And we get into those cars and we anticipate that those cars will perform in a certain way. And sometimes that car's performance is not fully actualized because we have not fully tapped into the full potential of that vehicle. From a leader's perspective, what would you say, or what would you speak into that analogy?
Well, I got several analogies there, Mercy, and if I could just pick 3 of them. The first one is, as a leader, you need to know where you want to go. And you have to ask yourself, if you want to go into the bush, do you have the right car? It's probably gonna be very difficult to have a Toyota Vitz in the middle of the Masai Mara in the rainy season. So, you know, you got to really question that. First of all, where are you going? And is your vehicle fit for purpose? I think the second one is to say, even if, let's say, you have the right vehicle to go, do you have the right equipment in the vehicle? Yeah, do you have a tow rope? Because sometimes you could get stuck and you need to put up your hands for help. Yeah, sometimes you might have to get 4-wheel drive. Does your car 4-wheel drive? So I think the second one is, what is the equipment the vehicle has? But I'd say more importantly, and for me, thirdly, yeah, it's really around, do you know how to drive the car? There's so many people who have cars that have so many features, so many tools, but they don't know how to drive it. And if that's the case, then you're underutilizing the vehicle. You have not equipped yourself to drive that vehicle, and it's very difficult to achieve success if that's the case, because I can bet the person driving the next car knows how to use it, has chosen that vehicle deliberately, and more importantly, they know where they are going and have chosen the right tool. So that's kind of the analogy I'll give.
Awesome. And I just want us to unpack bit by bit, just a little bit more detail into those 3 pointers you have raised. And the first one is, how can I, as a leader, determine the right direction that I need to be going at? Do I know where I am going? How can I do that as a leader?
Yeah, so I think the first one is that, Mercy, I think what you're saying is actually not accurate. It's not you as the leader who determines where you're going. It is your team. As a leader, you can have an idea, you can try to influence, but if you think that you are going to dictate on your team where you're going, then I think you're not going in the right direction. So I think the first one is to say that as a leader, you have an ambition, yes, but more importantly, can you impact and infect your team to buy into that? Because as a leader, you might be the driver, but I can tell you, if you're driving and your passengers are not comfortable, you're probably not going to reach your destination with all of them, because some of them will jump out. So I would say that as a leader, what are you doing to make sure you know where you want to go? But more importantly, how can you guarantee all your passengers are going to stay in the bus or in the vehicle?
So I'm hearing there that as a leader, you may have an idea of a direction, but you want to be in consultation with your team to have an agreement that you know that this is where the team needs to go. This is where your organization needs to go. And you want to map out and make sure that you are all in tandem in terms of that direction. Secondly, Chris, you did mention.
So Mercy, just to augment that, yes, getting on the bus is one thing. Staying on the bus is a totally different
another thing. Okay, great. So the other thing that it was very well tied into getting on the bus, getting the right people on the bus, which we're not going to go into today, but something you highlighted there is, do you have the right tools? Do you have the right equipment? Are you well equipped to be on that navigational route, that direction So you have agreed, you have the right team, you and your team have agreed in the direction you're going, but now you're asking, are you well equipped for that journey? How do you do that as a leader?
Well, I think the big word that comes to mind there, Mercy, is anticipation. As a leader, you have to say that I'm in point A, but I'm going to point B. Great. Everybody buys that. But as a leader, you have to say, what are the challenges I could face between point A and B? Is it going to rain? You check the weather forecast. And even if it rains, what does that mean to you? Do I have the right tow bar? Do I have four-wheel drive in my car? Do I even need it? Yeah. If I'm going into a sandy beach, do I need to reduce the pressure in my tires? Yeah. So it's different courses for horses in terms of how I see it. But I think as a leader, when you finally convince your team that we're going from point A to B, it's your responsibility for a leader to kind of think, what kind of journey is this going to be? And don't be fooled. Don't think that you're going to anticipate everything along the way. It doesn't work like that, because if you were that, then you'd be God. And you're not a God when you're a leader. But if you anticipate 60, 70, 80% of the challenges that you could face on the way, I can tell you that for a fact, you are 50, 60, 70% ahead of most leaders.
Absolutely. Yeah, the power of anticipation coming right through there in that lesson. And I think COVID has been one of those things that none of us could have ever anticipated. But yet, as leaders, we were faced by these challenges. And some of us have pivoted and have been able to ride the wave on that. And those that didn't, we know what has happened to them. So, Chris, let me come back to the third point that you raised. In the analogy of a car's performance, and you mentioned something about, do you know how to drive a car? Do you know how to drive the car? You have the team. You have mapped out the direction. You have anticipated what kind of a journey this will be and have prepared as best as you can and equipped yourself accordingly. We come to the competencies of you, the leader. How do you navigate that as a leader?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. And I'll give you an analogy. I probably driven for 20 years, and then I found myself in Dubai. And in Dubai, they refused to recognize my Kenyan driving license, despite the fact that I'd driven for 20 years. And they told me, no, we don't recognize your Kenyan license. You have to go back and learn from scratch. And you'd be amazed to know what happened. I actually failed the test 3 times and I qualified on the 4th. But when I reflected on it, it was several lessons that came to the front. The first one is the rules of driving in Dubai are different from driving in Kenya. In Dubai, you drive on the right hand side, not on the left hand side. So the situational context. I think the second one was really around that you have to unlearn before you relearn. So the fact that I've driven for 20 years means I developed certain driving habits that were not really relevant in the context of my new environment. And before I could embrace the new, I had to let go of the old. Yeah, so I had to unlearn. And I can tell you for a fact, it's harder to unlearn things than to learn things. I think the third one comes back to personal pride and ego. I could have easily given up on the second time to say, to hell with these Dubai guys. I have been driving for 20 years. Who are they? But I think, staying the course, having tenacity, and knowing that there's a new set of rules was quite a humbling experience. And, as an individual, I had to learn that. So I think if I take this back into leadership, sometimes as a leader, you have to reflect where you are and is your style or your approach fit for purpose. I think there's a second one, that speaks to the element of do you give up if you're in a new situation or not? And I think the third one, and by far from least, is to realize that the past does not dictate the future.
Awesome. I love that story of yours that you have shared. And the fact that as leaders, we need to recognize the need that from time to time, we have to be in a position of unlearning the past and choosing to relearn. Change is inevitable, and you need to keep equipping yourself so that you stay fit to be able to continue leading in the environment that you are currently in. The past might be important, but it may not necessarily serve the future into which you're going into. So, Chris, as we are wrapping up our leadership podcast today, I would like you, something we always like to ask all our guests. One is, what is your favorite car? What is the year of manufacture? And what is the model of that car? Could you please share with us and tell us why that is your favorite car?
I think that's a very easy question. My favorite car is a Jeep. The reason why it's a Jeep is what it's unique. You don't see too many of them on the road. And I like the 1988 model because I think that's the best one that ever built from a durability perspective. Yeah, but when I come back to the Jeep, you have to know the origins of the Jeep. The Jeep came out of World War II. Yeah, well, it was a military vehicle, but the fact that it could be repurposed into a civilian vehicle, just spoke to me of agility. But I think the second one is when you drive a Jeep, you realize it's a driver's car.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I love the speed.
You love the speed, yeah. But more important, because it's an American car, it's built for comfort. And I believe that if you're going to go the long journey, you need to be comfortable. So a Jeep is definitely my favorite car, especially in the 1998 model.
So I'm hearing agility, I'm hearing comfort, I'm hearing speed, and being able to integrate all these things, I think, are all virtues that any leader should desire to have. And so, what is your parting shot to our listeners, Chris, as we wrap up?
My parting shot is three things. I think the first thing, because we're using the analogy of the cars, choose your car to be fit for purpose. The second one is make sure all the equipment, including fuel, is in that vehicle. And if you're going for a long journey, especially which most of you probably on this call are, make sure it's designed for comfort. So, buckle up, be safe, and enjoy the journey, because leadership is definitely a journey. With Mercy, with that, I wish your team on the call all the best, and I look forward to being invited here again.
Thank you so much. We really applaud you for sharing such great nuggets and words of wisdom. We are truly, truly honored to have had you on our podcast today. So there you go, my listeners. We are yet again on our Leadership Garage podcast. We invite you, listen in, invite a friend, share with a friend, and let us learn together. Once again, it is me, your host, Mercy Achola. I'm the founder of Value Connect and also an executive program leader with the Maxwell Leadership Team. And for now, we say bye-bye and tune in once again at our next leadership podcast. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.